everybody, and we are here and we are live at klausteam.com and on YouTube at Klaus Team TV and on Facebook at Klaus Team. And we are here with Craig Klaus, Steve Farrington, and Twyla Edwards, and I'm Scott Koyman. How's everybody doing today? So we are talking about navigating the East Valley housing market. So how would you describe the East Valley housing market today, Twyla and Craig?
You want to go first, Craig, or you want me to?
Craig, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Right now, we're basically in kind of a stagnant market when it comes to in terms of sales to inventory. Over the last month or so, we've seen inventory start to decline for the first time in a while. I think we're having some sellers taking off the market, heading into kind of the summer is kind of a slower time for new listings to hit too. So that's kind of the good news as far as it's kept prices a little bit more stable, and great opportunities out there for buyers right now. And it just, again, it's right now it's kind of in line with the way it was in 2014, just kind of a balanced market, and just a little bit fewer transactions than we'd normally like to see.
And I think it's been so long since we've seen a true balanced market that it makes sellers a little bit nervous, and buyers definitely have more advantages. I wouldn't say buyers are completely in the driver's seat, but they definitely have more advantages out there, getting closing costs, negotiating price, negotiating repairs, things like that. So
yeah, and if you are watching and you want to ask any questions, please type them in. If you're on YouTube, type them into YouTube there. If you're on Facebook, type them into Facebook. And we did ask some people to send some stuff in earlier, so we did have some folks send in some questions previously. And the first one, Emily, one of our past clients, said, I saw a recent report that Arizona has seen some price drops. What does this mean for home values? Craig, you're muted again.
All right. Yeah, in certain areas, I think definitely from the peak, you're going to see a little bit of that. I think if you have that one chart, Scott, that I sent, that kind of shows that, maybe some recent dips in the Phoenix area, a little down 2.8% year over year is kind of their number, but up, as you can see, overall 47%. So overall, prices have maintained and held in a very low transaction count market. So that is due in large part to the lack of inventory overall, meaning we do not still have enough homes for people that want to buy them once affordability comes back into line better.
Yeah, we've seen annual appreciation going for 83 years with some dips.
Yep.
But
yeah, and I think in Arizona, like I said, overall long term, we're still in a really good spot, and it's just more, it's definitely mediated in some areas, probably come back a little bit, but I think overall we're still in good shape.
I also think some of the price corrections that we're seeing are just sellers having to come to reality of where we're at now, versus you can't just put it on and get what you want. You may not get what your neighbor got 3 months ago if your house isn't as nice. So,
well, I think that's key. I think a lot of sellers that are out there are pricing based on comps that are pre-tariffs, buyers that are thinking differently. They're thinking pre-inventory boom, and they're not looking at recent comps. And like Craig, we were talking earlier today about needing to really look at actives more than looking at closed when we're pricing.
What's our competition, right?
All right. Actives and under contracts, because that's what our competition is. The under contracts is a price that they drew an offer at. 36% of sellers made at least one price correction before they sold. In the last, I think that's over the last 4 months in recent sales. So it's not uncommon. I think the biggest thing is understanding not to panic, not to make $5,000 and $10,000 price corrections every 10 days. It's to really look at the data, look at the list to sale price ratio. How many showings are you getting? And what do we need to do to get into a different bracket of buyers that aren't seeing it now?
Noah wants to know what's the market like, trends, rates, inventory.
Twyla, go ahead.
Yeah, we've kind of touched on some of that. Inventory has slowed down a little bit. I think today we were around 29,000, where last month we were just over 30,000. So a little bit lower, but again, I think that's because some people took their houses off. I think we're getting into the busy time of year. Maybe people aren't listing their houses. So yeah, definitely not as many buyers out there. If those rates would come down a little bit, we would all be a little bit busier, I think. So
Steve, talk to us about rates.
Well, I mean, rates today closed right around 6.93% for the average 30-year fixed, higher than where we really wanted to be and where we've seen in recent weeks. But it's kind of the trend of what we've experienced over the last 18 months as we've kind of fluctuated between 6.5 and 7.125 for the better part of, I think it's going on literally 16 months right now. And just the uncertainty in the market is what's causing it. It's really causing that volatility. There's some spread issues between, the 30-year fixed and the 10-year treasury, which should come down and compress with some of the things that the current administration is looking to put into place, deregulating some of the bank requirements, allowing them to purchase U.S. treasuries, which will drive yields down, increasing the price of those U.S. treasuries. And that's the hope as we head into the latter part of this year. Of course, inflation's remained tame, which is always a good spot. And the employment is starting to slow a little bit. So those are really the key factors that should play into interest rates coming down over the next 6 to 12 months. But of course, there's no guarantees in that happening.
So Erica asked the big question, is it a good time to buy or sell, and why?
I say it's still a great time to buy. If you're renting a house right now, you're paying someone else's mortgage anyway. So let's talk. Let's find out what the best option is for you. There's several programs out there right now, down payment assistance. We have Community Heroes, or you've just saved your money and you're ready to buy a house. But we all know when interest rates do go down eventually, it's going to get busy out there again. So I think if you're on the fence to buy, I think it's still a great time to buy.
Well, and I agree with Twyla. It's like we've mentioned in the past, and I think we've kind of repeated the same message, is that every time we have seen that dip in interest rates, when they come down, even a quarter point. So if rates tomorrow dip to 6.625 from where they are today, I think that we would see buyer activity increase, meaning purchase applications. You'd have more interest. We'd start getting more calls for people, on listings. Just because of that slight movement, and that it really just kind of adds to that kind of positive energy and gets the buyers really kind of off the fence.
Twyla, you mentioned rent. Give me a rent figure.
I feel like 2,200 to 2,500 is pretty common out here.
$2,200.
Yes.
So let's say you were renting for 4 years. You would have given your landlord $105,600.
And we talk to people often that have been renting for 4 years, 5 years, because time just goes. They're like, I'm going to rent for a year. And then before they know it, it's 4 years later. So that's a really good number.
That figure is, you just don't realize how fast it adds up. It's $26,400 a year over 4 years, $105,600.
Well, and then if we go back and look at that other chart you had of what prices have done in the last 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as a landlord, thank you to all the renters, but we want to see people move into home ownership. We want to see people build generational wealth through home ownership and make that transition.
Well,
the median rent in 85209 right now is $2,300 a month.
Yeah. So the median renter over 4 years has given their landlord $105,000. So, and when we talk about a good time to buy, buyers have choice right now. Buyers have a little bit more push and play. They have a little bit more ability to negotiate than they did over the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And sellers are not giving everything away. It's actually kind of a nice place for both parties. Would you guys agree?
Yes.
Yes, we'd like to see transaction counts pick up, obviously, but I think the balance in the market is healthy. The last 5 years was not healthy, and if anything, it maybe catches us up a little bit on inventory, but not anywhere near enough yet. So I think it's definitely time to have more of a balanced, healthy market and rein in some of this, affordability issue that we have with prices going up and rates going up.
Michaela wants to ask about repairs. Should I make repairs before I sell my home? And if so, what do I need to do to get it ready?
That would be very dependent on each situation individually, and it depends on we're talking repairs or cosmetic improvements, things along those lines. And that's something that we would help guide you through, because everybody's situation is different. Every price point's different. Everything that can or can't come up is different. So it's something that we would kind of walk through and talk about, and really just kind of talk about what's the best route to get the most for the home, minimize the upfront cost, and maximize the value and the return. And it'd be more into individual type thing. But a lot of the obviously cosmetic things, kitchen, master bath, are two big areas that that we always try to focus on. And right now, move-in ready doesn't have to be overly updated; just needs to be move-in ready. And as long as it's
move-in ready and clean, right?
Yes.
Like fresh paint and carpet go a long way, and a good house cleaning goes a long way.
matching light bulbs in the bathrooms, just the little things, making sure that there's the doorbell works, and the little things like that. Because right now, presentation matters more than anything, because buyers do have choices. It really needs to kind of wow them in order to get them off the fence right now.
Well, and I know you've said it too, like we want every showing to count. Like we want you to be, we want you to participate and be ready to go when someone wants to see your house, but we also want the house ready because we're not getting as many people through them. So it's really important to make every one of those showings truly count.
Let's move over to Steve. Steve, what is this, Sarah from Gold Canyon? What is the average credit score needed to buy a home?
Well, good question. It's actually dependent on program. I mean, the average credit score is tough to say, but I mean, the minimum credit score for most programs is going to be a 620 when you're talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are your conventional bodies. When you're in the jumbo space, which is anything over that 806, 250 in Maricopa County, you're going to need a 700 plus for the best programs and best rates. FHA requires only down to a 580 with the 3.5% down, or 500 FICO score can be your low if you have 10% money down still for FHA. The VA 620, List Reports has this one wrong. There's actually no minimum FICO for a VA home loan. VA is very unique in the way that they qualify veterans and active military members. So definitely talk to a VA loan, expert like myself, that, basically if somebody tells you have to have a 620 for a VA home loan, that is incorrect. And then USDA, which is the 100% rural program, requires a 640 minimum and that's going to be a 100% program for, properties that are in kind of rural areas, depending on county. There's a few left in Arizona, but not many.
So while we're there, Steve, talk about what makes up your credit score.
Well, the biggest chunk of someone's credit score, when somebody asks me, like, what's the quickest way that they can increase their score or boost their score, the biggest thing is pay your bills on time. It seems the simplest, but it makes up 35% of your FICO score on all three bureaus. And when you're talking Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, unless you specifically know what credit card, what student loan, what car loan, which bureau they report to, because some of them don't report to all three. So it's very important to pay that bill on time, because obviously it can affect your credit score. Obviously the amount that you own, which is kind of that credit variable. If you have a $1,000 limit on your credit card and you owe over 30%, so again, $1,000 limit, you owe over $300, that's going to drag your score down. It's that credit utilization. So those are your two big ones. Types of credit, new credit applications can play a factor. And then of course your credit history. Credit history really starts to look back in that 2 to 5 year window, and sometimes as back as 7 years when you're talking derogatory events. But the two main factors are amount that you owe. So check your limits, check your balance versus that limit, and then also just paying those bills on time.
All right. What happens if the home doesn't pass inspection after my offer is accepted? Can I back out?
So inspections are kind of my thing. So I would say a home doesn't pass or fail an inspection. I think you guys would agree, right? So you're going to look at the items. What I tell my buyers is look at the items that are big ticket items: roof, AC, electrical, safety, those type of things. And then let's also look at other houses of that same age. If we can't cancel on this house, we'll get to that in a second, are we going to find these same problems in the next one? So I think getting a good inspector, understanding the inspection, go to the inspection, listen to the inspector, because they're really good about telling you, this is very typical in this neighborhood. You know, this is very typical of an age of this home. Or maybe we need to get an AC guy out and a roofer out and all of those things, and we certainly can. So that's our time to do the inspection, do that inspection period. If you decide like, this is way too much, I don't want it, you can definitely cancel and walk away. But I would just say when you're doing that, you want to be sure that what you're canceling on isn't going to happen next time also.
Yeah. And some of those things that, you know, Twyla, we already know they're going to come up in the inspection when we walk through the house. It's not a surprise. We've seen that the AC is old. We're going to assume that there's going to be some issues that come up with it, or we've seen some deterioration on the supports for the, you know, the patio. We're not surprised when those things come up. Now there's other things that'll come up that are surprising, things that come up in the attic that, you know, might be a little bit overwhelming. But for the most part, a lot of times in the inspection that things are not as big of a surprise.
But I feel like it's also expectations set by that buyer's agent.
Yeah.
I know Craig does more listings than anyone around, and I'm sure he sees inspections that I know we've seen, you know, super silly things on them. So again, with buyers, when I'm working, I'm always like, let's set the expectation of this house is 20 years old. There's a chance that it's going to need a roof. Let's take a look at the AC. How does it look? What about the water heater? Those are all things. And yes, if they're bad, we may negotiate through them, but we're not going to ask someone to, you know, touch up a wall of paint, or, you know, there's a lot of things that you're just going to see in a house. Go walk. Go walk around your own house right now and look at what you see. I know I don't want to in my house tonight.
So what is the process for if we have issues with the inspection? What are the three options?
So as a buyer, you can accept the property like it is, you can cancel, or you can send a list to the buyer or to the seller asking them for repairs or asking for a credit in lieu of repairs.
And then at that point, there's, you know, somewhat of a dialogue between the two and some negotiation that takes part. And that's where Twyla gets to shine.
Let's get through this, right? Well, I always look at it as we're all trying to get to the finish line, right? So as long as we're setting expectations on both sides, because if you get a seller who's like, nope, not touching the roof, I know it's leaking, but it's not my responsibility, well, a buyer probably will cancel. And you'll probably have to fix it for the next buyer. I know when I'm working with sellers, that's a conversation that I have, like, hey, they asked us for these 3 things, but all of these are things, if you refuse and they cancel, the next buyer is probably going to ask also. So I think it's just setting expectations on both sides and making sure you're working with a professional agent who understands that.
So Alex is tired of paying his landlord $105,000 every 4 years and is ready to buy a home. What are the steps? And we've got, let's see, we've got a chart there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this for me starts with, and again, Twyla and I talked about this on a previous live stream that we did, is really kind of, find either a real estate professional first or a home loan professional first, and start talking about, that you're ready to buy a home, because a lot of times we have, a team of people or people that we can refer you to. But really the biggest thing is kind of getting your finances in order to determine a budget, because not only a home loan expert, but also a real estate professional is going to want to know what budget, what's your price range, what's your price point, what are you looking to spend on a home, and then kind of go from there.
And then, Steve, like you're looking at a monthly budget. That's what I always find when someone calls and they're like, I don't want to spend over X amount. And I'm like, how did you come up with that number? Because let's put you with a good loan officer like Steve that can say, okay, you want to spend $3,000 a month. He backs the numbers up and then tells me, okay, we can go shopping for a house up to this amount.
Right. And that's where a lot of people start. And that's well said, Twyla, is that we kind of back our way into the loan amount based off of what they want that monthly payment to be. And they're like, well, gosh, okay, so I can qualify for a $400,000 home loan. Well, but I want a $500,000 house, and that'll let me know, and also the real estate professional, like, okay, well then that means you need $100,000 down payment, right? Because that's that difference between the price point that you want, or the area you're looking, and your home loan. And not always the case, but we kind of back our way into it. And then you look at your mortgage options, any first-time home buyer programs, any special programs that are out there that can help you get into the home with maybe a little bit less out of your pocket, and actually getting pre-approved. Because Craig will tell you as a listing agent, and Twyla will tell you as a buyer's agent, it's tough to go out and make offers when you don't have that Arizona pre-qualification letter properly filled out. I think that they actually require it to be submitted with any written offer. In the state of Arizona.
It's actually in the contract.
Yeah.
I mean,
there you go. And then really then after that, once you've got your finances in order and we've got you pre-approved and we know your budget, then it's really the fun part of it. And that's where, Twyla and Craig can take over as far as prepping that house hunt. And I'll talk to them more about that.
Let's talk about what the agent process is for looking for a house.
So looking for a house, I like to sit down and talk to you. We can do it through Zoom if that's better. But there's something to be said about our conference room, sitting down and going, what is it that you're looking for? Where do you work? I always ask people that, because I don't want you to hate life. If you tell me you work in Glendale, you don't want to buy a house in, Santan Valley. So I'm always like, where do you work? Just so that we can kind of have a good gauge of what that looks like. And then we know the price already because you've worked with a lender. Then we kind of talk about what your requirements are. How many bedrooms do you need? And narrow it down so that when we go look at houses, we're not just running around crazy. We know, okay, you want to be in Gilbert, or you want to be in North Mesa, or we can narrow that down so we're not having to look at, 50 houses, because I feel like you've been looking at houses for a long time online. So once we go look at them, we should be able to narrow that down. So it's not a super stressful thing. I want it to be fun. I want you to feel like you're getting a great value and you're seeing some options, but not be overwhelmed.
And then go ahead. I'm sorry, Scott.
Yeah, and then we move into finding that house and making our offer, and our agent starts to negotiate, and then we move contract to close at that point.
Well, and I think something important is once we find the house, people are always like, is it priced right? Am I paying too much? And so we're going to look at comparables and see what else is on the market, what else has sold in the last couple of months, and go from there and negotiate as much as we can for the buyer, asking for those closing costs right now, or appliances. Maybe the washer, dryer, and refrigerator are super important to you. So we're going to talk about what's best for you when we write up that offer.
And I have a question I have a question for Craig. As primarily a listing agent. So when you get that qualification letter from a lender, what are the things that you're looking for to kind of maybe, make it stand out from other offers that you're possibly receiving?
Yeah, and that's something we actually have in our listing agreements, that the seller doesn't want us to present an offer if the buyer has not submitted like W-2s, pay stubs, the lender has not verified down payment reserves, things like that. Those are the biggest things. Just have they submitted documentation to the lender, or have they just have a verbal conversation and pulled credit? Because that's a start, but that's not what we need to see in order to get to that point. And honestly, I know you do it. A lot of good lenders will call me as the listing agent when their buyer submits an offer, just to kind of talk and say, hey, here's what I know about them. Here's how long I've been working with them. Here's how my processes work. If you have any questions, let me know. Which is always, a nice thing, because it kind of helps me kind of feel a little bit more confident about the transaction being able to get done, because that's a huge part of it.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was just thinking that when you were talking, that when I submit an offer, I always CC the lender on it. And usually they've received a text from me saying, hey, we're making an offer, so that they can make that phone call too and just say, hey, they look good,
Mm-hmm. Good.
So Eddie wants to know if he has to sell his home first before he buys his new home.
Possibly. That's something we won't know until we talk to you. Honestly, it really depends. I mean, if you own the home free and clear, you have the money for a down payment, and not necessarily. If if you own the home with a minimal debt and you have the down payment, could you qualify for two? If not, we have our buy then sell programs, which allows you to remove the contingency, use the equity in your home to buy non-contingent on the next home. Different scenarios, different options for us that we can definitely get into. We have a lot more options today than we did 5-10 years ago, in terms of people that need to sell before buying. That's for sure.
Something I've seen a few of here in the last couple months also, and I don't know about you, Craig, but contingent offers. Some of them are getting accepted now, depending on what is happening on the first, but then if you're doing that, you're going to have to be very reasonable about what you're going to list your house for, because you need to get it sold. So,
and then it eliminates the kind of offers you can take, because you can also take a contingent offer on your house now because of the never ending thing there. And that's where, again, understanding and working with professionals that understand the different options out there to avoid being a contingent buyer is very important. As a listing agent, I can tell you most sellers don't want to entertain a contingent offer, especially on a house that's not under contract or even on the market.
All right, we're going to talk about pre-qualification here in just a second.
Hi there, I'm Kenny Klaus with the Klaus team, and we're excited to introduce ourselves as trusted advisors for buying or selling a home. We know the importance of having a trusted guide on this journey, and that's exactly what we provide.
Well, we've sold on average a home a day since 2010. We make it a point to ensure that each and every one of our clients has a memorable experience and the highest level of personal service that we become known for.
If you are looking to sell, my role is to guide you every step of the way, ensuring your experience is seamless and financially sound. For us, it's not just about selling a home, it's about creating a stress-free transition and bringing you the most options so we can help you price and present your home to maximize the amount of equity you take with you.
I'm here to help you find a home that not only fits your wants and needs, but a home that aligns with your financial goals and dreams. I'll make sure you stay within budget, finding a home that fits your lifestyle without creating financial strain. We're not just focused on the transaction, we're here to support you in making one of the biggest and most exciting investments of your life.
We believe in honesty, integrity, and guiding our clients through every part of the process, before, during, and after your sale or purchase. Whether you're buying or selling, we're here to make sure your experience is smooth, supportive, and rewarding.
We know that everyone's situation isn't the same, so we've developed more real estate solutions than anyone else. And no matter what you're trying to accomplish, we can help with a strategy tailor fit for you.
Our goal is to be more than just realtors. We want to be advocates for your financial well-being.
We're here before, during, and after your real estate transaction to help you with guidance, referrals of service providers, and ongoing equity tracking so you can keep track of what is likely your biggest investment.
And when you choose the Klaus team, you're choosing a team of agents who genuinely care about helping you succeed in your home ownership journey.
We're here for you every step of the way. Thank you for considering the Klaus team, and we look forward to helping you achieve your goals.
So Steve, what is the difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval? Hannah wants to know.
That's a great question. Pre-qualification is usually just based on consumer discussed or submitted data. So a pre-qualification is typically just a conversation that you've had with a bank, mortgage officer, loan officer, a mortgage broker that provides you kind of a ballpark estimate of how much someone can borrow. Like, hey, what is your score? What app do you use? You know, how much do you make average per year? You know, do you have any idea of what your debts are? So no real verification of income, of assets, pulling of credit, and it's typically done for free. And it usually doesn't
Kind of like what I
include
just said,
full,
right? The difference
Yep,
between
100%.
having documents, collecting them, verifying it versus a conversation and pulling credit.
Right. Well, and unfortunately, there's a lot of times that the pre-qualification process can be done online. So, you know, you go to your preferred bank, you know, or some of these big box online lenders, and they, you know, like, oh, get pre-qualified on my phone. And a lot of times it's just based off of what information the consumer is providing to that application. Very little of it is actually verified by that qualification system. A pre-approval is the borrower receives a conditional written commitment for an exact loan amount, like Twyla mentioned, after being pre-approved. We've collected W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns if needed, those assets, and actually verified them, reviewed them. In some cases, had them pre-underwritten. If it's a difficult situation, it'll speed up the buying process. It does require completion of a mortgage application in submission of those various documents, but trust me, it holds a heck of a lot more weight in the marketplace.
Well, and I feel like it's, I mean, obviously for a seller who's going to take their house off the market, but also as a buyer, why not just get it all done up front? That way you don't have any worries or concerns. And then all of a sudden you're, you know, 10 days from closing and find out you're not qualified. Like, that's not a place I ever want one of my buyers to be.
No, 100%.
Malcolm wants to know, is it true you still need 20% down?
No, collective no, right?
Absolutely
No,
not. And it's funny that that is such a rumor out there. It's like, I probably get asked that twice a week. And it's just surprising to me. I'm like, FHA is 3.5% down. Some kind, this is Steve's line of work, but you know,
But no.
conventionals are 3 to 5. So you can definitely get in for a lot less than 20% down.
Yes. And
It's the Dave
and I
Ramsey
think
effect.
What's that?
It's the Dave Ramsey effect.
Yeah. And right
He's
there, he's always telling people the 20% down, right? 15-year fixed. That's it. That's all you can do. Good old Dave.
Yeah, he changed that now, of course, but that was how it was.
Well, you think of
But I mean,
the economy now coming with 20% down, especially for a first-time buyer, is a lot of money. You're going to be renting and paying someone that much every year while you're trying to save the money, unless you're moving in with your parents and, you know.
well, in the average down payment, Scott just put that you know, the typical down payment that we see from Mortgage Bankers Association is first-time home buyers was 7%. So there's no one size fits all. Non-first-time home buyers, people just buying a house, the average is just over 12% is the average down payment, even for somebody that's maybe bought 3 to 5 properties throughout their lifetime. So again, 20% down isn't as commonplace as the urban legends or rumors will have you believe.
Urban legends.
And that's the advantage of somebody like you, Steve, is you can break down and run scenarios for them at 5, 10, 15, 20% down and show the cost difference in savings over the life of the loan versus all the different upfront costs and all of that.
Well, and I know Steve has done this with a couple people. Sometimes they're selling one house and buying another. And rather than putting all the money into the next house, they're taking care of some other debts to decrease their overall monthly output.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it really makes a difference.
Who is Meg going to work with during her real estate purchase?
Me. I was the quickest. If you're doing a purchase, you definitely want an experienced agent. I feel like someone who's been doing it for a while. I know we have a lot of new agents out there, and I never want, as long as they're being mentored, I think it's a great thing. But I just think this is an interesting market. I hate using that word, but I don't know another word to use. And we navigate it every day. You know, in our office, we're talking about things that are happening, and we're having buyers cancel for reasons that they really shouldn't if they were prepped and educated for the process. So I think you want to just make sure you're working with someone experienced who's also going to get you the best deal. It doesn't mean you're getting it for free, you know, but in this market, I'm like, the best deal might be paying closer to that value. If we look at comparables and it's right, paying closer to the asking price so that you can get your closing costs covered, because that's going to be money in your pocket. And maybe with that money, then you can put in the new carpet or little things like that, asking for the appliances. So you're not having to go run out and buy all of those right away. What about a home warranty? Some people love them, some people hate them. But for a first-time buyer, that $600 that you pay for it could be a nice little insurance policy for that first year. So I just feel like there's a lot of things to talk about that we just learn from experience too. So,
yeah. And I think throughout the process, as well as you know, there's those point guards, you know, to use a basketball reference, there's those point guards like your loan officer, your agent. But throughout the process, I mean, you're going to hear, you know, from my processor or loan assistant, you're going to hear from a transaction coordinator, possibly on the buyer's side of thing. You know, the escrow agent is going to reach out to you throughout the process, you know, home inspector, appraisal links. And so having, you know, that real estate professional or lending professional that's going to let you know, like, hey, we're going to send out the payment link for appraisal. It's legitimate. Feel free to contact, you know, hey, escrow is going to reach out to you next to get the earnest money deposit delivered over. So those are the people you work with throughout. But Twyla's correct. I mean, it's really just having Twyla's like me. That's it. You know, on the lending side, you have questions, me, just call me. You know, like, hey,
well,
who is this?
We have
you know?
good resources too, right?
Sure.
Like we all know we've dealt with lenders that aren't as good as Steve, right? Like there's definitely inspectors that probably aren't as good as others. I never tell anyone who they have to use, but I'm like, hey, here's a list of 5 companies that my clients have been happy with. So I think it's just that experience out there, masterminding, you know, we do it as a team. And then I'm in a couple of other mastermind with groups of women that, you know, I can send a text and say, hey, you know, who do you use for this or whatever is going on. So it really keeps us in the know of what's going on in the market. So
yeah, it's on the list of people that we tend to recommend. It's difficult to get on the list. It's very easy to get off of the list. So what are some different types of loans out there? Which one is best? Which one is best?
Woo. Again, a very open-ended question, but when you're talking which one is best, it really depends on the buyer. There are different loans out there, and within those different loans, there are different programs within them. You know, the different types of loans, like we kind of mentioned with the minimum FICO, is you've got, you know, your conventional loans, which is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, requiring a minimum of just 3% down. And then you've got your government bodies, and that's going to be, you know, FHA, 3.5% down, VA for veterans, active military members, and surviving spouses, which is 100% up to 100% financing. USDA home loans is in that government program. The jumbo program, again, if you're over county limits. But within those, I mean, like the conventional bodies, there's going to be certain lenders, banks, credit unions. There's certain cities and states that have, you know, government grants that are available. You're going to have, you know, certain, I don't want to, not charities, but you're going to have certain organizations that offer down payment assistance, you know, if you go through them. So again, those can be lumped into those conventional bodies or FHA down payment assistance programs. But those are your main ones. So to say which one is best, it really depends on, again, you know, what are you looking to put down? What's your credit score? And how much can you qualify for? Because they all have their little different nuances that can kind of help me fit you into the proper box and get the best fit for you.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, Steve, but price point matters also, right? Because FHA only goes up to a certain number. Conventional goes up to a certain number.
100%. They all have their loan limits, and so that really matters as well. So good point. But yeah, really, it's just starting that conversation to say, you know, obviously we can kind of remove them as we move through the process of having that initial conversation. But yeah, price point and loan amount is actually where those limits come in for conventional and FHA.
Tom wants to know, what are closing costs and how much are they? We've got a lot of different kinds of closing costs. Steve, let's start with, if somebody is financed, what kind of closing costs that they have?
Well, from the lender side, the only thing that we control as lenders is, when you're talking about a loan estimate, is really just kind of your loan origination costs, which can be discount or origination cost or points, which are percentages of the loan amount. And then typically an underwriting fee. Some lenders charge a processing fee and an application fee, and they kind of lump those in. But that's just typically those top four are the ones that we as lenders control. The rest of them are kind of third-party costs, which, can be, which includes appraisal to confirm property value, your credit report, because obviously you need to verify credit, title and escrow costs, setting up for taxes and insurance, homeowners insurance, possibly the home that you're buying has HOA fees. But, unfortunately, as lenders, we're required to disclose everyone else's fees when we send out initials disclosures. So we gather all those fees from title, from the purchase contract that Twyla and Craig put together, and put it on that initial disclosure CD that'll come out within 3 days of your accepted contract from the lender of your choice. So yeah, it's a lot. It can be overwhelming, but again, a good lender will actually call you and say, hey, let's go over this together. So if you have any questions, we can go over it line item by line item.
And I would say, just obviously every lender is a little bit different, but price points are a little bit different. But we all know there's certain numbers that when we're asking for concessions, I know Steve and I have talked, 2.2, 2.5 is usually the range. Of course, if it's a condo, there's all the variances in there, but that's typically the range that we're going to be looking at.
Of the purchase price.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Donald says, I heard sellers don't have to pay agent commissions anymore. How does an agent get paid when buying a house?
Well, Donald, that's actually true, but it's always been true, it turns out. Commissions have always been negotiable. The difference now is we can't offer it up front or advertise it. And now if you want to, say, look at a home with an agent like Twyla, you have to sign a contract that says if the seller is not willing to pay her, then the buyer would be responsible for it. So in a lot of cases, if the seller says they don't want to, they certainly don't have to, but typically a buyer is going to ask for 2.5% to 3% in seller concessions to be able to pay their agent commission, because most buyers, they have their, like we just talked about, their down payment, their closing costs with the lender and the title and everything else, to have the additional 2.5%, 3.5% to pay their agent. A lot of buyers just don't. And so if the seller is not willing to and doesn't pay concessions, then the buyer just may not be able to proceed with buying that seller's home. And so typically it's something that, I always talk with my sellers, we focus on the bottom line when we get an offer. We look at the number at the bottom, and then if that's not enough, let me know and let me figure out how to get to that number. And that's the most important thing. And that's what we're going to focus on. And so, yeah, it's something that it's, always been negotiable. And it's just more explaining it, understanding it, and realizing that it's really going to end up being the same type of format and process overall.
And I will say, if Craig is your listing agent, he's going to do his best to make sure that that number is super, super low. If Twyla over there is your buyer agent, and she's going to make sure that it's as close as it needs to be to make sure that that agreement is where it should be. So the agent is the one that's negotiating that on your behalf. So as the buyer, it's not something that is of huge worry to you during that offer process. But it has always been negotiable. It's just now part of the offer process, and it just never was. It never was part of the offer process before, and now it is.
And I think that was what was new to all of us, right? It's another addendum that goes along with the contract now. It's like the HOA addendum or lead-based paint or something like that. So it's part of negotiations. So
Well, yeah, for me, 21 years of doing it where we weren't allowed to discuss commissions in the contract to now we have to discuss in the contract.
Yeah. So let's talk the final thing that we want to talk about. Let's talk about the benefit of home ownership, renter versus homeowner net worth. It's a little different.
well, this is where you kind of said earlier, you figured out the number that people are paying to a landlord every year. So there's that's going towards your principal, which at the beginning, it's a very small amount. Let's not kid ourselves, but eventually it starts being more and more. Also, over the life of your loan and however long you've lived there, appreciation is going to help get you there also.
Another thing that happens too is there's a different mindset.
I was just going to say that, Scott, especially with the younger people, like becoming a homeowner versus a renter you will see a change and a difference in maturity and growth and things in that. I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, we talk about building generational wealth, and when you become a homeowner, that mindset shift happens, and you do start to many homeowners start to track their net worth, which a lot of renters aren't doing. They're not tracking their net worth. A lot of homeowners do track their net worth because they see it changing, and they start to make different decisions on the things that they're investing in, the things that they're focusing on. And through that process, that net worth does grow. And it is something that folks need to focus on, as they're moving towards retirement, much earlier than later, hopefully. And your home is going to be a good chunk of that. And the earlier that you start, the better.
Yeah. Well, and something to remember too is when you're talking about building that net worth, when you're buying a home, you're buying, let's just call it a $400,000 asset. Typically, if you're only putting 5% down, which is $20,000, so your initial investment, we'll kind of leave closing costs out of it, but initial investment of $20,000, but your $400,000 home in 5 years is now worth, $518,000. You've just gained $118,000 on a $20,000 investment. So your ROI, or return on investment, is significantly more than if you had to go out and buy a share of Berkshire Hathaway stock for $110,000. You've got to come up with $110,000, not $20,000. So that return on investment of that initial investment, and the cost, can be significant, and that's why getting prepared and saving for it. But when you look at the average net worth of a homeowner versus a renter, and this has been, you could go back before 2019 and it just continues to grow.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of people don't understand and apply to the idea is that it is a rare investment that we are able to apply our housing cost to an investment. We can't do that with our vehicle costs.
Right.
Our vehicle costs, what I spend on my truck is not an investment. My truck is a depreciating item. My home is an appreciating item. It's not depreciating, it's appreciating. My truck is depreciating. So everything I spend on my truck is a loss. Everything I spend on my home is an investment. And
go back to that chart from the beginning. Only other than 2008 through 2011, you had one other year where there was home price didn't appreciate. And there's a lot of fear over, it's going to crash because of what happened before, right? It goes up really big and then everybody assumes it has to, but the fundamentals are so different that if you're buying a house today with the idea of you're going to be in it 3 to 5 to 7 years, you're going to have appreciation at the end of that time frame. If you're looking to buy it and sell it in 6 months, probably not. But the homeowner today is typically, I think it's gone up to 8 to 10 years. Its average length of stay. You just look historically, you're not going to be in a worse position. That's for sure. You're not going to lose money in that in the long term. And it's easy to hop on X or online social media and to create a quick video saying the market's going to crash. I follow a couple guys that for the last 3 years, every month they keep saying it's going to crash, it's going to crash. I guess you just figure at some point, maybe if you get lucky and you're right one time, that's the only one people will remember. But there's no fundamental behind it. There's no data behind it. They don't have any real reasons behind it. Last month we had 73 trustee deeds in Maricopa County, but we also averaged about 4,000 a month in 2008 through 2011. So we've got a long ways to go before any of that kind of stuff happens, and people are sitting on too much equity.
Well, thank you guys so much. If you're watching and you have any other questions, you can always reach out to us at klausteam.com. If you want to see our menu of services, you can see it at klausteam.com/call us first. And you can reach out to us at 480-354-7344. And thanks to our panelists, and we'll see you next time.
This episode is brought to you by Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions, powered by Real Broker. At the Klaus Team, we're focused on making sure our clients have the most solutions, the solid representation and risk mitigation they deserve, and an incredible experience from day one. For us, it's about 212. At 211 degrees, water's hot. At 212 degrees, water boils. Boiling water produces steam, and steam can power a locomotive. It's that one extra degree that makes all the difference. At the Klaus Team, we go the extra degree to make your real estate journey exceptional before, during, and after your purchase or sale. For us, it's not just about a transaction. From buying your dream home to purchasing wealth through investments, our 212 experience ensures outstanding service every step of the way. But don't just take our word for it. Check out our client reviews on Google or at klausteam.com/reviews. We're Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions, your real estate partner for life.